All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the LoudMouth MMA podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Steele. Today, another edition of Around the Cage featuring, I'm going to say it just how they appear on my screen. In my top left, we got Keith from the MMA Takeover. Keith, how's it going?
It's going well. How you doing, brother?
Living the dream. We got Blake from the Loaded Joe's MMA podcast, also LoudMouth Boxing. Mr. Blake.
What's up? What's up? It's Money Blakeweather. You got to keep adding it in there. Nobody's going to believe me.
No.
Hey, how come I didn't get my full introduction like Blake got?
I from the MMA Takeover. What else are you from?
Well, I'm from the LoudMouth Americans Got Talent.
Where are you from?
Hour review. I do the Hour of Americans Got Talent review.
Did you listen to the companion this week? Because I'm pretty sure we came up with like 10 other LoudMouth branded podcasts. We had LoudMouth Water Polo. We had.
I'd rather jack off with a handful of tacks than listen to you.
Loudmouth jack off. That's it.
And we have Derek Bowe. I guess we'll say from Cybernetics.
Well, yeah, sure. Champion's Life has been good, so it's nice to chat with you guys again. Hope you guys can keep up this week.
This is Derek Bowe, of course, last week won the interim belt. The women's featherweight title was handed to Dave Madden for getting last place. This week who didn't join us last week, but is here this week, is Ian Parker, and we'll say you're from Cage Hero.
Perfect.
We'll say you're from Cage Hero. There it is. So if anybody else wants me to add anything relevant, Keith, to their title, to these introductions, you just let me know, and I'll hit you up next time.
I feel like it should be mandatory to wear a backwards black fitted hat for next week's episode.
No, because he's all. I'm pointing as if people can see what I'm pointing.
Sorry,
at.
I was just doing the same thing.
I know. If you look,
Blake, Derek, that was for you guys.
So you three have the backwards black hat, and then Keith, of course, is dressed like he is pushing Bibles.
Sound like knives door to door.
Or vacuums.
Those headphones are not plugged into anything.
All right, so let's get started. Let me go over the rules real quick. Okay, first rule, each person gets 90 seconds. Okay, second rule, do not interrupt each other. That's a big one. Happened a little bit last week. It was actually Derek. Last week.
Yeah, you should have got a negative point for that.
So
that was like a late punch. That was a Geronimo late punch to me.
That's it. Hey, guys, we already handed out the women's featherweight belt. Again, this week, whoever's in last place, we'll make sure to hand out a new one. That thing's going to get passed around. And the winner, of course, will either remain the interim champion or we'll have a new interim champion. We'll see. Okay, so do not interrupt each other, please. It's really hard to hear. If I feel there's a need to rebuttal, I will give time to rebuttal. The amount of time I give will change depending on whatever I feel. It's at the win. Whoever wins the argument, again, I guess according to me, whoever wins the argument gets a point. We're also this week going to hand out gold stars because I did find out that there is a potential for a tie when you have 4 people. So then it's going to go to gold stars. So gold stars can be funny one-liners. A gold star can be to second place, whatever it is. But we need some other measuring device so we can have a tiebreaker. So I did realize that last week. Okay, that is all. Are you guys ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
What is Blake drinking tonight?
Blake,
don't ask questions you don't want the answer to.
We talked about this. That's your brand. If you don't want us to know, then no one's going to sponsor.
I don't want anybody to know. It's Red Bull's in here, but I'm not going to say what other brand is in there.
Sorry, Kyle, my fault.
Red Bull and Kamchatka. Listen.
Yeah.
I'd be a lie if I said I did not have Kamchatka in my freezer because it was like $7 for like a gallon. All right. Our first question this week. If Vitor has one fight left in the UFC, as of right now, that is the scuttlebutt, is that there's one fight left in the contract. Maybe there isn't, but we're going to pretend like there is. So, if Vitor has one fight left on his contract, who should that fight be with? This week, we're going to start with Ian because he did not join us last week, and we need to hear Ian's voice. So let me get the stopwatch started. And once it's started, you got 90 seconds, good sir, whenever you're ready.
Perfect. You know what? Normally, I was going to say Anderson Silva, but we already know the take on that situation. Anderson magically thinks he deserves a title shot, which we all know there's no way it's happening. I'm going to say Uriah Hall. Reason being for that one, no interrupting, no head shaking.
Because you read my article.
All right. No, I don't even know who you are. But the reason just kidding. Pretty much reason for Uriah Hall is essentially it's time where either Vitor needs to fight someone that's of a Vitor name status or put somebody over and give someone else the limelight. You know that will be a striking fight. It's a style matchup that we'd want to see. Hopefully they don't make that matchup in Brazil because that would be very scary for him to get knocked out in his home country. However, if it's truly his last fight, either go big or go home, give him a style matchup where you know it's not going to go to the ground or be put on his back. And I think that's really the only way to go if Anderson Silva is not available for it.
I like it. Short, sweet, and to the point. Also, I'm just going to automatically assume that if Ian doesn't win, he's at least getting a gold star for the who the fuck is that guy reference. I appreciate that. All right, let's move on over to Derek Bowe. Derek?
Well, my answer was going to be Anderson Silva, but then I really started thinking about it, and I'm going to say Nick Diaz. And that's obviously we're talking about, like, is Nick Diaz actually going to take that fight? Probably not. But let's be real. If we're going to have a fun fight where Vitor is not going to get hurt in, a guy who's a name value, somebody who Vitor can build his name off of still. Nick Diaz can build his name off of beating Vitor if he beats him. It's a fun fight. Two guys that people recognize. And let's be, like I said, Nick Diaz isn't going to hurt Vitor. He's not a guy that does that.
Rebuttal?
There's obviously some obstacles to get through, but there's an obstacle for anybody that Vitor is going to fight this. Let's be real. It's Anderson Silva or Nick Diaz. I like the Uriah Hall argument. I'm not going to lie. I honestly love that argument. I can't even say anything negative about that.
Thanks, man.
Thank you very much. Blake, moving on.
Yeah, man, I think Hector Lombard. He should fight Hector Lombard. I know Hector Lombard is coming off of a loss, but listen, UFC probably wants to get rid of Hector Lombard. Hector Lombard's been co-main event or main eventing, fight nights, so people kind of seen Hector Lombard. He's got a name, and it just makes sense. Like, I don't think it's going to be anybody that will hurt Vitor, but they'll sell it as it's a potential for Vitor to get knocked out by this motherfucker, this Kumba-looking motherfucker. So they can sell it. They can sell it in Florida even because it's kind of Black Zillion's ATT. Like, they can sell the shit out of this fight if they really want to. And then loser leaves town. It's either Vitor getting the fuck out of there, or I think Vitor's going to knock Hector out, and Hector's on a 3-fight skid. So, I get it. Like, he's on a losing skid. But you know what? Like, it's a striker versus striker. Ain't nobody going to the ground with this. So, I mean, that's who I think he should fight.
Now, we'll just assume that the Hector Lombard Anthony Smith fight doesn't happen. So, alrighty, Keith, last argument here.
Well, I mean, he probably should get a title shot. I mean, because that's what Michael Bisping does, right? He just fights bums. Now, I mean, if they're going to build off like Andrei Arlovski to get people over and BJ Penn to get people over, why not do the same with Vitor? There's really 4 options you can do. 2 of them are good and 2 of them are bad. The first option,
just need one.
Yeah. This is how you set up a debate, brother. The first one that would be. Am I going to get to talk or what? All right. The first one would be a bad option that they might do is like give it to like a Luke Rockhold who's coming off an injury. That's horrible because everyone knows Luke Rockhold would kill him, and it really doesn't do anything for Rockhold. The worst thing they could do is match him up with like a journeyman that doesn't really do good for any of their career, like an Eric Spicely or Chris Camozzi. If Vitor wins, it doesn't really do anything for him. If they win, yeah, all right, you beat the ghost of Vitor Belfort. The 2 options that they can do would match him up against like a young up-and-comer that hasn't have a name on their record yet, like a big name, like a Polo Borrachina, however you say his name, that just fought the other day. He needs a guy. He's undefeated. Get a big name and a win. Another one would be a Jack Hermanson, who just picked up a huge win. He's a guy that a lot of people are into. Or what I wrote the other day is you kind of match up against a guy that kind of has a little bit of an established name, but needs – has shown potential, but hasn't really built off the potential. So like I wrote in my own article yesterday, I said Uriah Hall because, you can do that. You can show the Vitor highlights. You can show the Uriah Hall highlights. Obviously, they both have these spectacular
10
knockout
seconds.
skills. So that's why I think like Uriah Hall is a guy who struggled, but now since he gets a win off for Vitor, you have a huge thing. Somehow Vitor wins. Now you kind of can build off of him too. Or another guy, Christoph Jocko, is another guy you could build off of.
All right, here we go. I'll be honest with you. I don't think there's any need for rebuttals here because I already have my mind made up. I'm going to go Ian. I thought he made the clearest argument. I think I do agree with the Uriah Hall. I did read Keith's article where he did pick Uriah Hall, so it's unfortunate that Ian went first. Although I will say I think Ian got to the point quicker because that was the issue I had with Keith's argument. You danced around a little too much.
Well,
he also chose 8 other fighters.
I had to come up with a new argument. Was I going to say, oh, yeah, I should go with Uriah Hall. How about you just read my article?
All righty. I like it, guys. This is exactly how this is supposed to go. Everybody is so catty. And I love it. All right.
I'm going to sit over here and jerk myself off, too. Don't worry.
Question 2. Oh, Blake, by the way, you're going to lose all of your points if you drink that in front of that mic again.
Or jerk off.
Yeah. Listen. I would.
I'd probably gain points.
Listen. I would rather you jerk off than drink that into a microphone. I'm being real. Just flop that out in front of the camera instead of drinking that thing in the microphone. I will come at you.
I'll move out the way.
I will come at you. Question 2. Who is at fault for DJ's? We'll just say lack of numbers. It's not the best way to put it, but you guys know what I mean. Who's at fault for DJ's lack of success? It is definitely making the news circuit right now, so I'm very interested. Keith, you're all fired up. Let's start with you.
I mean, the UFC's to blame. That said, not everyone can be a star. There's 12 weight classes. There's 12 champions. They don't have the marketability to have all 12 stars. A lot of people say that blame DJ. They'll say, well, he doesn't have the personality of a McGregor or a Brock Lesnar or someone like that. Not everybody can be a huge trash talker. If you come off like a trash talker and it's not genuine, like it doesn't fly. A good example is TJ Dillashaw. When he tried to trash talk with Dominic Cruz, he came off like an idiot, and he felt uncomfortable. Now on the reality show, he really is kind of staying away from the trash talk with Cody Garbrandt, and he's actually coming off kind of good, and he's actually building fans because of that. What they should do is they should be marketing the streak. They should be marketing like, hey, look at this soft-spoken, unbelievably talented guy that is just smoking everybody. And it's kind of a thing that like international wrestling did with Alexander Karelin. He was a very soft-spoken guy, but he came off as like this, like untouchable, like nobody could ever touch this guy. Like who's going to get a chance? And then when Rulon Gardner actually did it, it became the biggest story ever in that Olympics. It was the huge story of that Olympics. I mean, Pride did it with Fedor. The UFC kind of did it with Ronda Rousey, where they were kind of building her, like, look how unbelievably better she is than everybody. Anderson Silva had that. They had that because Anderson Silva was never a trash talker, and they built off his skill. And the best thing that would happen to him is if somebody else came in the division and became the villain, kind of like Chael Sonnen did to Anderson Silva in the middleweight class. Now, I don't think because of the natural disability of Demetrius Johnson being in the lower weight class, there's a lot of people who just automatically don't like the lower weight class because of the lack of power.
10
so
seconds.
He'll never reach that Brock Lesnar, Conor McGregor level. But if they could properly like promote the streak, he could reach like a Daniel Cormier or a Donald Cerrone or something like that level. All
righty. Let's move on down to Derek.
I feel like I'm at a little bit of an advantage because I went over this in a discussion a few weeks ago. He is 100%, and I'll tell you why. The UFC threw him a bone, and they threw him a bone when they made the Ultimate Fighter series based solely around finding somebody to fight the pound-for-pound number one guy in the UFC. They marketed him as the guy. They based the whole season around marketing Demetrius Johnson as finding somebody to beat this guy. Obviously, nobody believed to beat him, but what did he do? He scoffed at it. He made fun of it. He called it. They tried to throw him a marketing bone, and he threw it right back at him. So he's 100% to blame. As a champion, you can either have it one way, you can take your ball, you can fight, show up, take your ball, and go home and be with your kids, be the guy who's going to be a father, be the guy who's going to, just not be a promotional guy. Or you can be the promotional guy, and you don't have to talk shit. You don't have to have this abrasive personality. There's other ways to do it. That's a lazy way of thinking. You don't have to be that guy. Hey, there's plenty of YouTube stars. There's plenty of people. Hire one of those people, put them in your corner, give them a little bit of money. You're a video game guy. You connect with social media networks all the time. Hire one of those people, let them do your brand marketing for you, teach you other alternative ways to get your name out there, to connect with fans, to connect with people, make more appearances, make yourself visible. You can't be the guy who shows up, takes your ball, goes home, and then never talks to people, and then shows up and fights again, and it's like, hey, I want people to like me. Well, nobody watches your fights, so nobody's going to like you. But what they want to see you connect with people. They want to see you connect with the fans, host some discussions, have some people make some public appearances. Be visible. That's how you connect with fans, so it's 100% his fault for not being visible, period.
I will say one thing that I have thought is, because we all listen to a lot of MMA podcasts, at least I think all of us here do. I never hear him on any of those podcasts ever. I've never heard him on Half the Battle. I've never heard him on. True. Listen, I've never heard him on. I'm not talking about the MMA Hour. That's not what I'm talking about.
That's the number one there. That's the number one there is.
Yeah, but I don't even listen to that one. Like, I understand that a lot of people do, but going on the MMA Hour is not connecting with fans. That's going on CNN is not connecting with fans, and that's what the MMA Hour is. Going on the little tertiary stuff, going on public radio, that's where you're connecting with real people, and that's where these tertiary podcasts like LoudMouth, like Half the Battle, like Average Joe's, like Loaded Joe's, like these are those types of podcasts that reaches people in a different way. You're not reaching as many people, but it's really easy to sit down and go on the MMA Hour. Now, this isn't even really my point, but I will say that I have noticed that, and I've thought, like, man, I don't even know how to get a hold of him, even if I wanted to. And even if I wanted to, I highly doubt he'd ever do it. Yet
he's been on Joe Rogan like once.
I could get a UFC champion on here, right? But I couldn't get him. So I guess that being accessible, I think it's a good argument. Blake.
I mean, that was basically my argument that Derek said.
Listen, you guys can have. I want to make sure everybody understands this. You can have the same argument and still have a better version of it. So, if you're going, if you're going first, you have kind of an advantage. But at the same time, if you're going third, you still have an advantage because you can pick and choose. I mean, listen, just make a good argument.
I got you. Yeah, man, it's definitely Demetrius Johnson's fault. And he doesn't necessarily, like Keith said, I think Keith's skewing it a bit. He doesn't have to shit talk, I don't think, to be seen. He gonna make an appearance on Ellen, Dr. Phil, go be Steve Harvey show. Like, give white people some shit to work with, and they'll buy your pay-per-view, man. Like, it's easy as that. Become the one that the house moms talk about, and they're like, have you seen this little squeaky toy champion? Like, he's so cute. He's like my size. All he has to do, just make more appearances, be more known, but make efficient, targeted appearances on the right places that can get you there. They can get you seen to where most people. I've never seen him on not Jay Leno, but like Conan O'Brien or fucking Jimmy Fallon. They do like a YouTube, I'm sure they could do like a little YouTube snippet thing and have some fun with it. I've never seen him on anything like that. Now, Jimmy Kimmel, I think he just needs to make these targeted appearances, and the people will buy into it. Like, they'll buy it. Like, he's not the shit talker, but maybe he's the funny guy. He's got personality, and he really does. I've heard him on the Joe Rogan podcast. Man, that dude's smart. The dude's got a sense of humor, and I think you only find it if you're on Twitch. Like, I'm not on Twitch. I don't play video games, bitch. So I need to find out, some more about Mighty Mouse through other channels like that, other people like that, other figures like that.
Ian.
All right, so Blake, because you pretty much, as you said, repeated what Derek said. Keith and Derek, you're both right. It's both sides' faults, actually. I think I'm the only one who's managed a UFC fighter out of the group of us, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a different view on how this really works. Number one, to Keith's point, the UFC has the opportunity to market whoever the fuck they want and put that machine behind him as the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. They could do whatever they want, market whatever they want. Remember, Anderson Silva, when he first came into the UFC, knocked out Chris Lieben. Didn't speak a lick of English, had a higher voice than Mike Tyson, didn't have a personality from the whole wall. We didn't know anything. The first time you saw that was when he wore the mask against Vitor Belfort, the Phantom of the Opera mask, okay? That was the first time you saw the blood boil and saw personality, all right? To Derek's point, Demetrius Johnson is invisible. He does absolutely nothing to promote himself. He doesn't need to talk shit. However, they did build a show around him, and he was on maybe one or two episodes in the crowd. So what do? the management of DJ is actually probably to blame. They should be pushing for the marketing. They should be pushing, outside of just Xbox, the sponsorships. He should not be headlining FS1 or Fox. Make him headline a pay-per-view and put a strong co-main event and a stacked card underneath him to build that up. That's where the UFC is at fault, and that's where DJ needs to use his leverage with his management team on how big he is in the sport by saying, listen, I'm not going to fight unless it's a super fight or be on the top of the pay-per-view card, and stack it underneath him to build it. So essentially it's both sides. There's just different angles and different ways of doing it.
Boy. This is a really, really hard one.
Are we going to rebuttal?
I kind of think we need rebuttals here because I have no idea. By the way, for the first question, but I'm getting really bad echo. I think it's from Ian. There we go. Yeah. So, by the way, for the first question, Blake got the gold star. Just so we all know. Blake got the gold star for the first question. I don't remember why now, but I wrote down gold star for Blake, so must have had some one-liner. All right, I think we need some rebuttals here because I have no clue who to go with. Let's do, how many seconds does everybody want?
30.
30? Okay, let's do 30. Keith is the one that brought up the rebuttal. We're going to go Keith, Ian, and then we'll go Derek, Blake. So, Keith, you get 30 seconds. This is a strict 30 seconds. I will cut you off.
Yeah,
if you go over, your time starts now.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know we could take the option of one or the other because I agree with what Ian said. I agree that it's actually both. But if we're picking one or the other, it's the UFC's fault. Now, Blake made a point. He needs to go on Ellen, and you go to the Tonight Show, and you go to Jimmy Kimmel. Guess what? Unless you're a star, they don't want you. They're not calling up. Guess what? Donald Cerrone is marketable. When have you seen Donald Cerrone on Oprah or the Tonight Show? The only ones to do it is McGregor and Rousey and Lesnar. I mean, you talk about they need to go on smaller podcasts. Sam Alvey goes on every freaking podcast there is, and he ain't headlining pay-per-views or any shit like that. He ain't a big star.
Granted, Sam Alvey is not as dominant in his division as Mighty Mouse. We'll go to Ian. We'll go to Ian. It's a good rebuttal. Very good rebuttal. Ian?
No, you know what? To Keith's point, I think Keith probably should win that rebuttal before when everyone else says anything, just based on the whole thing is this. Demetrius Johnson can't go on all those big shows. Even if he does all these small little shows, not everyone hears of that. The MMA Hour is the biggest one. If he goes on Joe Rogan, that is the biggest one. The UFC needs to put him in a fight where the name happens. The Cody Garbrandt fight would have been the one. Dillashaw, I think that fight should happen if you have to force that fight to happen. Otherwise, you got to wait. Him versus Ray Borg is not the answer. Or let him beat the record, but he needs a super fight. The UFC can control that. If he gets a super fight, then he will be a star like everyone's asking for.
Move over to Derek.
Well, it can't be the UFC's fault then, right? Because they're trying to book Dillashaw and DJ. They're trying to put on top of a big card. That's what they're trying to do. So it's definitely not the UFC's fault.
I gotta jump back in.
And no, you can't jump back in. Hold on. And then we're gonna talk about the shows. We're gonna talk about the Ellen shows. Yeah, that's cool and everything. But there's other ways to market yourself. Social media. You're gonna tell me that these YouTube stars who are absolute no names have become something because they have a platform to work off of? No, they became something because they know what they're doing. They hire the right people. They talk to the right people. They learn from the right people. He needs to do the same thing. Learn from the right people, put the right people in place around him, market himself as such because they will help him build what he needs to build.
Let's move on over to Blake.
Yeah, Derek got him before I even had to get him, first off. Second off, yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. Even if he doesn't go on these big shows and they're not calling for him, he could call them. He could make that happen. Or he could make a funny thing happen. Stop! Get that out of my face. He could make some funny videos. He could make something. He could make something to let people into his life, whether it's a blog, whether it's this, that, or the other thing, and make it interesting. I mean, whether he hires somebody from YouTube or not, or comedian, or whoever he wants to hire, strategist, he can do this. He can choose to go on all these shows. Maybe they are calling him. We don't know about it, and he's saying, "No, I'm good." It's ultimately his decision how big or how little he wants to be. Kind of pull your own self up by your bootstraps type
5
thing.
seconds.
We don't know any of this. And UFC is trying to make him big, and you don't want to be big with this title fight. So.
I know. Okay.
Can we get another round?
Keith,
10 seconds.
Hold on.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Okay, listen. I'm going to give you guys 10 seconds, but it has no effect on who I'm picking. So I'm just letting you know. I'll let you guys make your piece. Okay, let's move on.
I'm gonna get it out anyways.
I'm gonna go point for Keith. I'm gonna go gold star for Derek Bowe. And I'm not going to offer any explanation. I got to write. It's because I got to write this stuff down as I'm going along. I'm going to lose track.
That was my favorite round of both shows.
We
That was
could
so
have probably
good.
done that the rest of the show. That was good.
That was a good one.
Yeah. All right. This time we're going to lead off with Blake. If you guys want here's the tally so far. Both Ian and Keith have a point, and both Blake and Derek Bowe, have a gold star.
I thought I got a gold star in the beginning for the "Who the fuck is this guy" comment.
No, because I wound up giving it to Blake for something. I don't remember what.
The most
Because he
overused.
jerked off on an all-men show.
Yeah, give him a point.
I don't
for
think
the
that
most
was it.
overused joke in the last 6 months.
Oh, you guys are so catty. All right.
That's original.
Number 3, most important win of Conor McGregor's career. It's extremely self-explanatory. So we're gonna lead off with Blake.
I think it was Dustin Poirier, and because before he had all these title fights, like this was the pinnacle fight in 2014 that people were trying to dig into him. And granted, also he was on the Demetrius Johnson card, but nobody knew about it. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. I think that was the most pinnacle fight because if he doesn't win that fight, nobody buys into the hype. He doesn't fight Dennis Siver. He doesn't fight Jose. He doesn't do all these things. He had just headlined a card in Ireland, and everybody was digging into him. And granted, it was on Fight Pass, but people knew about it. People saw it. And granted, it was against Diego Brandao. Nobody gave a fuck. They were buying into the hype. And this was the pinnacle point. He did all the press conferences. He called Dustin Poirier P-head. Everybody got to see his character come out in this press conferences. So this really, kind of made or broke him as to which way he was going to go. Was he going to go back down, start fighting Cole Millers, or was he going to go up and start fighting for the belt? And we kind of saw what happened, man. This was a pinnacle point in his career.
I mean, I saw Keith's horrific reaction to that, but I think it's a good point because if I'm imagining Conor McGregor in my head, I don't necessarily think that was the most important fight, but if I'm imagining in my head Conor McGregor's career, it does feel like that fight was a turning point. So I do. It's a good argument. But don't let Keith clean out his ears in front of you too much because I think it's a valid argument. Keith's got to go last for that one. We're going to move on to Derek Bowe.
The most important win in Conor McGregor's career is the win that he had the most to lose in, and that's the Chad Mendes fight. He put it all on the line in that fight, and the reason why he put it on the line, they did the biggest promotion in lead up with Jose Aldo. They did a 3-month tour all around the country, around the world for the Aldo matchup, and then Aldo pulls out with 2 weeks to go before the fight. Insert Chad Mendes. Conor McGregor accepts. He accepts on a guy that he's not trained for, a guy who has a completely different style than Jose Aldo, and it's UFC International Fight Week, the biggest stage in the company's of the year for the company. Conor McGregor accepts the fight. He is injured. If you guys go back, I compel you guys to go back and watch the fight. His knees, his balance was not there. He looked like he was on ice skates in that fight. He was not the Conor McGregor that we're used to seeing. So he was injured. If he loses that fight to Chad Mendes, a fight that he accepted in the last minute on the biggest stage, all the hype is gone. The train is halted, and there is no Conor McGregor pound for pound, whatever you want to call him. There is no double championship. There is no even shot at Jose Aldo. Everything hinged on this fight, and he went out there and got it done. While being injured. That was the biggest risk. That was the biggest accomplishment.
Good argument. Ian, we'll move on to you.
Kyle, can you repeat the question?
Of course. What is the most important win of Conor McGregor's
I know where he's
career?
going with this.
Me too.
Yeah. So the answer is it hasn't fucking happened yet. All right.
Oh.
All right. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Number one, Derek, your response for Chad Mendes, I actually think that's a good answer because the 2-week notice, I think if Chad Mendes had a full camp with his wrestling pedigree, that would have hurt Conor. We could say that the win against Nate Diaz the second time around got him back on track for a third match. And we could say Eddie Alvarez. Here's my reason why I'm giving this out-of-the-box answer. It's simply because we haven't seen him defend a title yet against somebody that threatens his style. If he goes against Khabib or Tony, guys that are top-of-the-line wrestlers that can keep him on the ground with their cardio, I'm sorry. I don't know about you guys. I want to see Conor fight either Max Holloway at 45 or the winner of Khabib and Tony. I want to see what he's made of outside of this because up until, hear me out, Poirier was a tough fight, Mendes. But Dennis Siver, Marcus Brimage, some of these guys that we all thought style-wise, all right, it just, for me, look what Chad Mendes did. on 2 weeks' notice in a full camp, a guy with a wrestling background who could throw hands. All right. I wish Conor stayed at 45. I want to see the Frankie Edgar fight. Okay. I would love to see the Holloway rematch. Holloway is the most improved fighter in a very long time. And I think those fights would really then show the status, because I'm sorry, you cannot call Conor McGregor the GOAT of 45, and we'll get to that later, when he hasn't defended the belt once. All right? I respect what he's done. He's put up, unlike Chael Sonnen, he's talked and he's won. Okay? And he's the real deal. He's got the UFC numbers. He's the personality they're looking for. But at some point, if you're a real champ, especially 2 divisions, defend the fucking belt. All right? I respect him as a fighter, but I think at this level, the status of his actual fight career, the most important fight of his career, has not happened yet.
Hey, this is a good answer, and I think Keith is going to have a different. I think we're going to have 4 different answers to a question, and I thought there'd only be one answer.
I was trying to
so this is incredible. This is incredible.
People haven't said this answer.
Give it to me, Keith.
The Dustin Poirier one was absolutely absurd answer. Sorry, I love you, Blake, but that fight was 3rd fight from the top. Give me a break. It was under Demetrius and Chris Carmioso, and Cerrone was fighting somebody else like Jim Miller or somebody that was the headline over that. Chad Mendes, that's a great point.
Alvarez.
Yeah, all right, Alvarez. He took a fight against in 10 days' notice. Yeah, I mean, sorry, but he had 8 weeks training for a camp. Chad Mendes had 10 days. He came off the couch. And he was losing that fight for most of the fight. The biggest the fight was Jose Aldo. He went from being a star to being a mega star after that fight, because that point he proved that he backed up his talk. He spent almost a year and a half building this fight, going on the tour, and then he beats him in 13 seconds. It wasn't just that he backed up his talk, that he built it like, oh my God, he isn't so great. He's fucking amazing. The first punch he threw, he knocked out one of the greatest of all time. I mean, the Diaz, I understand people could argue Diaz. The problem with the Diaz win is like 50% of the people out there thinks he lost that fight. And the Eddie Alvarez one is a good one because it gives him the 2 titles, puts him in a 205, gets him in Madison Square Garden. The problem was Eddie Alvarez. Most people didn't even think he was the best fighter at light heavyweight at that point. I mean, to be at lightweight at that point. Most people were picking Conor McGregor to win. He wasn't like Eddie Alvarez wasn't a long-time champion. He was kind of like the right place at the right
10
time.
seconds.
At the end of his career, when they say which all-time great did he beat, it'd be Jose Aldo. When they talk about at the end of Conor McGregor's career, they're not going to talk about that he beat Dustin Poirier and Chad Mendes. They're going to talk about he knocked out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds.
That's it. God, this is another hard one. I don't think there's
a rebuttal.
Do you guys need rebuttal? I think certainly Derek and Blake need rebuttals for sure, because they need a chance to defend what their original answers were. So I'm going to give everybody 20 seconds. We'll start with Blake and then move on to Derek.
Well, Keith just said it was a year and a half in the making. Guess where it started? Dustin Poirier fight. As soon as he got done. Shut up. I need my seconds.
It's his time.
But that's not true, though.
Stop talking.
Your 20 seconds. Blake, your 20 seconds
talk.
start over. Your 20 seconds start over.
Thank you. That's where it all started. Started a year and a half ago. He took over the post-press conference, and that's where we saw his character come out, and that's where he was like, I'm going to start winning everybody. Listen, you don't have the chicken without the egg. You don't have all these title fights. You don't have all these other fights. If he doesn't win this pinnacle fight in history, I'm sorry. This was the most important fight along his career to get to where he's even at right now. We're not talking about a Mayweather fight without him winning that fight right there. I'm sorry.
Okay, go. Move on to Derek.
The most important fight in his career is the most when he had the most to lose. It was against Chad Mendes, guys. He was injured in that fight. His knees weren't there. He couldn't spring back up from a takedown. He couldn't defend a takedown. Keith, you're a wrestler. You know you can't sprawl when you have a hurt knee. That's impossible. Now, if you're going to make the argument for Aldo, so Conor McGregor goes and loses out to the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world, because that's what Jose Aldo was. Let's be real. That's not that bad of a loss. But if he loses to a guy on 10 days' notice in Chad Mendes, Conor McGregor can bounce back from a loss against Jose Aldo.
5 seconds.
Conor McGregor could have never bounced back from a loss to Chad Mendes. That's the most important win of his career, because it would have done the most damage to his career had he lost.
We'll go to Keith.
Yep.
20 seconds.
All right. I mean, he said it started with the Jose Aldo. I mean, Dustin Poirier. No, it started when he beat Dennis Steven. He jumped out of the ring and got in Jose Aldo's fight. Everything you said about Dustin Poirier, you can go back further. If he lost to Diego Brandao, it would have been over. If he lost to Marcus Bremage, it'd be over.
5 seconds.
You say he can't stop takedowns against Chad Mendes. You can't stop taking because the guy's an NCAA All-American. And if you talk about guys' best fight of their career, Randy Couture, what was the biggest win of his career?
That's 20. That's 20. That's 20. That's
Hold on
20.
a second. It's supposed to be 30 seconds.
No, 20. 20 seconds. 20 seconds. Ian.
Hold on. At 1 point, it'd be 3 seconds.
No, Ian.
All right, I'm not gonna defend mine because I think mine wins in the situation because it's too difficult. Dustin Poirier, Blake, you got a point. The problem is Dustin Poirier's name doesn't really get Conor McGregor anywhere in that situation. He's too back and forth in divisions. Chad Mendes. Yes, I still agree with you, Doug. However, injuries don't matter. Everyone's always injured. He didn't talk about his knees till after the fight because if he would have lost, then he would have had this. Same thing with Luke Rockhold. My knee this. I've been a fighter. I was a wrestler. We're always injured. We're never healthy. Okay? The Jose Aldo, truthfully, yes, the one punch is pretty significant, but that rematch should have happened. That's why I still don't think the biggest fight of his career has happened yet to show his status of the GOAT.
Keith, whatever it is that you wanted to finish up saying, I'm going to give you like 5 seconds. Just
take any fighter. Take like a Chuck Liddell. What's the biggest win of his career? Beating Vanderlei Silva or knocking out Randy Couture or beating Jeremy Horn?
Done. That's 5 seconds too long, son. That's
all right, there it is.
I literally stopped.
There it is.
By the way, Demetrius Johnson has 480,000 followers on Instagram. That's pretty solid.
Jeez. God. I'm going to give the point to someone who I don't necessarily want to give the point to, which means that person already knows who's getting it. I'm going to give the point to Keith, but I'm going to definitely give the gold star. Definitely going to give the gold star to Ian. It's a tough one. I appreciate. First of all, thank all four of you for giving outside the box answers.
That was the only reason why I did that because I was going to say Derek's answer.
I would say Chapman is he's calling it out. I appreciate all the out of the box answers. I think at the end of the day, the most important fight is the fight that makes you the superstar. That's why I'm going to just say I do think it's Jose Aldo. But every single one of you made legitimate arguments for other people. Like, here's the thing. I don't think saying Dustin Poirier is insane. That's not crazy. That's not a crazy answer.
Aldo and Mendes.
It's not a crazy answer. I mean, I understand it, but it's not. To me, it's not a crazy answer. Mendes, not a crazy answer.
We still got to find out what Blake's drinking.
If you would have said Marcus Brimage, it's not a crazy answer. I mean,
whatever
honestly,
you told me.
I could tell it's really funny how you know that Blake is actually mad is that he's making jokes and not laughing at them. Blake laughs at every joke he's ever made, and right now he has not laughed at any of them. So,
I'll actually say Derek's composure is fucking freaking me out.
I know, man. That's how he is. That's how he was last time too.
The silent assassin.
Well, you got to think having these. You got to think having these two in the finals. You have Keith, who looks like he's about to have a fucking heart attack, and then you have Derek, who looks like Gunnar Nelson.
Keith looks like my old wrestling coach who wears a suit and tie and is yelling. And, like veins are popping out. He's ready to go. Get on the mat and go.
Get the half. I'm pulling my loaded Joes right now because my
old school loaded Joes.
All right, let's do this.
My mic stand just freaked out. All right,
this is fantastic.
All right, I need to add in the points. Wow, we have 2 questions left, guys. We'll be finished before the hour's up, though. Who did I give that point to? I gave that point to Keith, and I gave the gold star to Ian. All right. Although, I'll tell you guys, dude, this is tough. Like, I would rather be making arguments than having to pick who wins arguments. It just seems infinitely harder. Okay. The 4th question here. Okay, 4th question. Can Bellator pull in UFC numbers? Can Bellator pull in UFC numbers? Kind of the basis for this question is you're seeing them doing a lot of things. They're having, they have their pay-per-view is going to be in a movie theater. That's different. That's unique. Now they're talking about doing this 170 tournament thing, or at least that's what they're hinting at. That's interesting. It seems like they're trying to do different things. Obviously, their ultimate goal is to hit UFC level numbers. So I'm interested in what everybody says. For this question, we're going to start with Derek Bowe, and that means everybody has had a chance to go first.
The answer is no. And most of the reasoning for that stems from the production value. If you look at the way that they present things on TV, there's a lot of delays. There's a lot of going back. There's a lot of improper graphic work. When the fighters stand and talk to Jimmy Smith after their wins, they don't stand in the correct place for the camera to pick them up. It's all they don't pay attention to detail, and that's the one thing that the UFC does better than anybody. If you really pay attention to a pay-per-view event that the UFC runs, it's just it's levels above what Bellator does. Another reason is the tape delay. The tape delay is awful. And if any of you ever been to a live Bellator event, I've covered a few of them already. Guys, we get handed a bout order. Those bouts a lot of times happen out of order. That's absurd. If you're press and you're trying to cover an event,
concur.
If you're trying to cover an event and you have a fight coming up, and I'm gonna be real with you guys, I don't always know some of the undercard fighters that are happening on Bellator. So these guys get announced, I'm like, wait, that's supposed to be so and so and so and so. That's not so and so and so and so. So it's like it's the attention to detail is why the Bellator is never going to compete with the UFC. They're just not on that level. They don't have the people behind the scenes to make it all happen. And just obtaining credentials is difficult enough in itself. Not meaning it's hard to. I shouldn't say obtain them. It's to get them structured and to get them everything sorted out. It's just a run around trying to get everything done with Bellator. They're just not on that level, and they, in my opinion, they'll never be because they're just so many miles behind the UFC.
All right, thank you. Does anybody want to go next? Anybody have a hankering to go next?
I think you should change the question a little bit. Say, what's your argument to why Bellator will not do it? Because I don't think anyone here is going to literally think.
Well. I mean, I personally, I think that they can.
I think it can happen.
Let's start with Ian. Let's start with Ian. Keith, you think it can happen? Let's hear what we can think it can happen.
Okay. There's one way it can happen, but let me get to it first. My answer is no, it can't happen, but you'll find out when I get to it.
Fair enough.
The problem is the UFC is bigger than mixed martial arts. Yesterday, a guy was asking me, what's my talking about sports? And I said, my favorite sport's mixed martial arts. And I go, UFC. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. So it's a star-driven sport. You need stars. But the only way you can be a star is you need the brand UFC behind you. Because everything else is looked at as minor leagues or XFL or Canadian Football League or something. Case in point, Michael Venom Page. Compare Michael Venom Page to Conor McGregor. Now, I know there's some differences. He doesn't have as much of a personality as Conor McGregor, but he's a big-ass trash talker. He's funny as hell. He's flashy as hell. But you know what? He can walk down a mall in any freaking in America and no one knows who he is. He's got a European, he's got an accent, he's a trash talker, he's flashy. Doesn't matter. They can bring in every star from the UFC. They can bring Benson Henderson and Rory McDonald. They can bring in Fedor. Some people say the greatest of all time. The pay-per-view, they have absolutely loaded the pay-per-view, and it will not do what Holly Holm and Duranda Meets numbers did, and that did like 175,000 buys. Their last pay-per-view was like under 100. The only way it can happen is if the only way it can happen is somehow the UFC collapses on their own. There's some conspiracy. It's like they do something to get themselves off of TV, or there's some kind of like Enron type thing, and they just happen to be in second place. But it's so unlikely. So my answer is no, but it's the only way. The UFC has to sabotage themselves.
All right, Ian.
So the answer is obviously no. The UFC has monopolized the sport. They are the brand of MMA. So if I'm Bellator, I try to embrace being number 2 and just accept it. You're not going to beat the UFC. Look, it's pretty clear when you have Chael Sonnen, who hasn't won in forever, as the main event over Fedor versus Matt Mitrione. And you're pitching Mitrione as the next big marketable heavyweight against Fedor. Like Michael Chandler, how is he not the main event? How is Bader and
Phil Davis?
Thank you. Phil Davis, not on the pay-per-view card. It's little things like that. It's not going to happen. And doing the tournament's not different because Bellator started off doing the whole tournament situation. Right. That was actually what made, I thought, interesting was they had that whole thing. Now they just went to super fights, circus fights, and they're working with what they got. They do have talent there. To Derek's point, a lot of these undercard guys are local guys in the area to try and bring sales to the local arena wherever they are, which is typical of like the Ring of Combat, smaller shows like that. Bellator needs to take guys like their Michael Chandlers, not lose them. Fedor, Mitrione, Vanderlei Silva Chael is a circus fight. Okay? We all know that Chael's going to try and put him on his back, or Vanderlei's going to knock his ass out standing up. Why main event? The best part about it was the interview. 10 seconds, got it. All right, so I saw the microphone coming. So long story short, production value, Derek's right. Keith's point's correct. My point's correct. My point is embrace being the WCW to the WWE. Embrace being number 2, and take advantage of the talent you do have.
Let's hear from Blake.
Well, say the question again, though.
Okay. Can Bellator pull in UFC numbers? So that could be viewers, that could be dollars.
Okay. Yeah, I just needed that repeated just so I could kind of, because no, the answer is no, but like, here's the thing. They can maybe hit the numbers that UFC are doing right now, but then UFC might be doing bigger numbers in 5 years. You know what I'm saying? So it's a really weird question, but I don't think of course they can't now. Like there's just, nobody knows them. And what the fuck is a Bellator? Like, I don't know. Like they need to change they need a whole marketing restructure before we can even have this conversation. Like, call them Strikeforce Volume 2. I don't give a fuck. Something that people know, though. You know, Pride Volume 2. I don't give a fuck. Like, call it something where people they know this is what it is. Because I tell somebody I'm watching Bellator, they're like, oh, who's in that movie? Bitch, I don't know. It's not a movie. I tell them I'm watching UFC, though. They know what the hell I'm talking about. They need a whole marketing restructuring, quite honestly, to fix their problem, man. And it starts just, you know, they got some talent. They just need a whole marketing thing working. Whatever they're doing good, do more of it. You know, I don't know what the answer is, but obviously no.
All right, I'm going to give Ian the point for that one. And I'm going to give Blake a gold star for saying, what the fuck is a Bellator?
What's amazing is that, to answer that question, I think they were actually on the Spanish ESPN Deportes when they first started. So.
And even my Mexican family don't know what the fuck a Bellator is.
I didn't want to say it, but I was really hoping you were going to tell us that answer.
Hey, can I jump in? Can I just add to Ian? Because I agree with everything he said.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
And I mean, this is way off our topic now, but the reason the tournament was different, and it was like a good idea. The problem with it, and the reason why the UFC stopped doing the tournaments, is because of injuries. It's like when the PFL comes in and they want to do this tournament thing. They live in this fantasy world where they think, all right, this guy just keeps advancing, like no one gets hurt. And the reason why...
You mean like the Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah, the reason why Michael Chandler and Fedor is not headlining the pay-per-view is because Chael Sonnen has became a star because of the UFC. And if Chael Sonnen and Fedor walk down... I use this example too much, but if they walk down a mall, everybody who knows who Fedor is knows who Chael Sonnen is. But not everybody who knows who Chael Sonnen is knows who Fedor is. Am I lying?
Interesting. Put that one for next week.
I mean, am I lying?
I'm sorry?
Am I lying? Is there anybody who knows who Fedor doesn't know who?
I think if you're an MMA fan and you know who Fedor is, Fedor and vice versa, you know.
I don't think so. All
right.
I actually agree with Keith. I agree with Keith here. I think way more people are going to know who Chael is than Fedor. But if you know who Fedor is, you sure as hell know who Chael Sonnen is.
Exactly.
But if you know who Chael Sonnen is, there's a pretty decent chance you don't know who Fedor is, honestly.
And you're a casual, yeah.
Yeah.
You know this.
Because casuals know who the hell Chael Sonnen is.
Because hardcores are going to buy. It's casuals that you have to get to buy.
All right. So we are going into our fifth and final question. I just want to say again, guys, this was an absolute blast. We do. It looks like we already have our finals determined, just according to the points here. This is our current rankings. We have Ian in first place with 2 points and 1 gold star. We have Keith in second place with 2 points. He has no gold stars. Is not surprising. We have Blake in third place with 2 gold stars. We have Derek Bowe with 1 gold star. Right now, looking like he's going to get the women's featherweight belt.
He is.
You look like Jermaine Durand in there.
He looks like Rose Namajunas when they came to the. No. Like, you know, she had that face when she was all. When
Holly Holm was going like this. He looks like Gunnar Nelson.
What you don't know is Derek is actually wearing a trench coat underneath that sweatshirt. He's about to shoot you, Keith.
He is writing your name down on the list right now.
He was in blood.
Yeah, remember, I agreed with pretty much everything you said originally.
Derek, I've agreed. I know I haven't given you very many points, but it's because it's been a really tough round. But I mostly agree with everything you said. So just so you know.
I love your hat.
It's a great hat.
I was not making fun of you just now. I want you to know that.
All right. Our fifth and final question. Describe what the perfect perfect MMA union would/should look like. So if you could sit down and write legislation or write a grant or whatever it is, do some type of charter writing for the perfect MMA union, what should it look like? 90 seconds. Ooh, my stopwatch popped off. 90 seconds. We're going to start with last place here. We're going to start with Derek.
The perfect MMA union doesn't look like anything because it doesn't exist. Combat sports is the only sport where competition relies 100% on negotiations. And there is no regular season. There is no schedule. There are no annual tournaments. There is nothing but negotiations. And when you bring negotiations into play, as they already are, there's a lot of obstructions already in place. You want to bring a union into play that's going to mediate those negotiations. How hard is it to make a fight already, guys? It's only going to get harder if you bring a union in. When you start having people, it's a single person sport. If you start having people negotiating on other people's behalfs rather than themselves, there's going to be problems amongst that. There's going to be problems trying to get fights made. There's going to be problems with the rules in general. There's going to be everything going wrong. It's going to be hard to get. It's going to be, if a union comes into play, it's going to be the death of MMA, period.
Didn't need all 90 seconds there. Alrighty, let's move on up. Blake.
The perfect, is it MMA union or UFC union? What was the question?
It's same thing. We'll just say same thing.
That's not the same thing.
Well, however you want to phrase it.
Okay.
Cigarettes and beer for everyone. Perfect.
I mean, that would be winning. But the perfect MMA union, I mean, it would look like all the fighters, doing shit together, like either not fighting or fighting for the little pennies that they're making. But they would likely be represented by people like Keith and Ian, who would yell and debate them to death until they get what the fuck that they want.
I did that already. You're right.
You know what it's like. And then it's kind of like the Million Man March, but with like fighters. They need to do some shit like that where they all get together, they all meet up, they all have some shit worked out that somebody, again, like Ian, worked out their contracts where all these stipulations have to be met before I do it. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't look like they're meeting up at like a Scientology room or some shit like that, but like they something where they all agree and sign some shit, and then they're all either fighting or not fighting or doing some shit, or everybody's saying something, as together, not, one fighter speaking out and all the rest of the fighters like, that's stupid as fuck. Everybody needs to be one union voice, one spoken voice. I don't know, man. I don't know what it looks like.
10 seconds.
Like those are descriptions of it.
Appreciate it. Keith?
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with Derek. Unions are great for the fighters. It's terrible for the fans. Having a monopoly like UFC is good for the fans because UFC calls the shots. When the fighters have no power, matches happen. That said, the best structure would kind of be something like the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police, because you have a national.
Of course.
No, but hear me out. Let me give you an example. You have a national one, and then you have little city departments who have their own. So, like, you'd have a national fighters union, and then you could have, like, each organization, that you'd go to them and you'd have, for example, like when you become a pro fighter, you pay a due and you're in the national. Another one would be like the Actors Guild. When you become an actor, they have like if you have lines, you get this much money, blah 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 blah. And then when you become a bigger star, obviously you could demand more money. Same thing. So you would have like, okay, if you're in pay-per-view, you get so many points. If you're in a title fight, you get so much money. You have pay-per-view cards, so much main cards, so and so all the way down the line. You'd have like a league minimum. This is the minimum. Now you could still negotiate like you do in the NFL, but here's the minimum. Here's the like a rookies or your debut minimum, different things like that. There also should be like in FOP a longevity pay. When you get so long, like as a police officer, you get to a certain
seconds.
point, you get extra money. Another thing they should be taking money out and putting it in a 401k like other businesses have. And all right, I have another point, but I'll save it for the finals.
Yeah, I'll save it for the finals. And then finally, Ian.
So, Keith, I'll start with yours to agree with you, but I will tell you there actually is a minimum when a guy in the UFC comes in. It was 8 to show, 8 to win. I'm pretty sure they bumped it up now to 12-12, which is still horseshit. I will tell you.
It used to be 300.
Yeah.
I remember it used to be 300.
Well, when I started managing guys like Weidman, John Vellante, Costas Philippou, this was the numbers we were getting in that situation. To give you real numbers, and you would jump up every 4,000 with a win. Once you hit 22 and 22, you can only get knocked down by 2,000 per, even on a loss, unless it was 3 in a row. So there is a minimum. The minimum is just really shitty. When you look at some of these low-card boxing guys, and Blake will attest this, we talk about this all the time, they make more money than top 5 guys in the division in the UFC. And I'm just using the UFC because the way Bellator pays, there's no structure. If you get a big name, you get paid. Really, everyone should go there if you want to make money. Look at Rory McDonald. Losing, go gets $500,000 for beating Paul Daly. It's a sport. To Derek's point, there is never going to be one. This sport, and I've said it on other podcasts, I've said it even on Ariel Helwani's show, this sport is a fucking facade, okay? Anyone can go in and become an MMA manager. It is all about the negotiations. If you win, you have leverage. You have a big social media following. You have leverage. If you lose, if you're standing up and getting knocked out or you're not quitting, you have leverage like a Chris Lieben. They take care of those guys. 10 seconds. All right, my bad. So, the union is kind of an impossible thing. Listen, guys, you're a fighter. You got into this sport. It's performance-based, okay? This is not the NFL. You're not part of a team. It's all on you at the end of the day. You win, you're in. You pump yourself up. You create a brand. That's all you got.
I mean, unfortunately, you guys kind of left me no choice. I have to give Keith a third point because he's the only one that really answered the question.
Hey, can I say?
But that's not fair because he said yes and no.
No. He gave an actual real world example of what a fighter union would look like.
No, that's cool. Trump's my president. Go ahead, though.
Listen.
No, go ahead though. No, for real. No.
This is the.
You also could have made that up because I didn't even know the thing about the police thing. To be honest with you, it sounded great, but it was definitely made up.
Now talk about Trump and police. Let's do this.
This is the most angry I've ever seen Blake ever. I've never seen this, and it's making me feel uncomfortable. So it's probably making our listeners feel uncomfortable, especially people who know Blake. All righty. So I'm going to give Keith the point there, and we're going to give the gold star to. We're going to give it to Ian. I think he did the second best job there. All right.
Derek, I'm going to donate that gold star to you because I kind of took your argument a little bit and elaborate with it. And he looked so sad, Kyle. He looked so sad. He just deserves something.
So
me and Derek has agreed a lot. That's a first.
That's kind of scary.
We agreed on at least one answer.
Well, even on questions that you all should have agreed on, we all had separate points. It was great. So Blake told us all to go fuck ourselves.
Yeah, basically. So Derek, you unfortunately are taking home drum roll, please. Not the interim, the full on women's featherweight belt. Hang it loud and proud in that bedroom tonight. If there's anything you want to plug before we let you go, take the time and go ahead and do it.
Yeah, guys, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at DerekBo7. I host my discussions on Facebook at DerekBo Official MMA. You guys can come in and be a part of that. Give me a follow and shoot me any messages, guys. My DMs are open.
Did you plug Cybernetics?
Oh, yeah, Cybernetics. I read about craft beer, too. So I have a beer group, and follow cybernetics.com.
And it's great stuff. I've been checking it out. It's great stuff. All right, Derek, we'll see you next week.
See you guys. Take care.
Later, man.
All right. And coming in third place is, of course, Blake, the sassiest one of them all. Blake. Blake, anything you want to plug, my friend? The floor is yours.
No, it's okay. The Jews and the white people beat up the Mexican. It's just typically what happens in Trump's America.
Build that wall.
Before
Lock her up.
Before I get deported, get kicked out of here, they build that wall for me to be left out. Go follow Loaded Joe's MMA podcast. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn. Go check all that out. And then also go check out LoudMouth Boxing. If you like boxing and you like to hear somebody drink beer and talk shit about it, please go check it out. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and within the next week or two, we will be on iTunes. So please go look out for that. Thank you so much. That's my time. I'm about to get deported. Oh my God, they just walked in right now.
I hear ice in the background.
Because you made fun of the Jews, that was really.
Yeah, don't forget that Dana White was a guest speaker for Trump's What was it called? That meeting thing?
Yeah, whatever it's called.
Is it weird that I'd rather look at this picture that's still showing on my computer, Blake, than the actual live video that I was getting right there of him miserable that entire time? Oh, I love that guy. He's
Poor
great.
Blake. That was the most uncomfortable I've ever seen that man.
By the way, Kyle, you're a little bit of a savage, bro. So not only do you guys not come in first or second, you didn't get to watch first and second battle it out.
No, we
You're
absolutely
you
don't.
guys did a terrible job tonight. You now go home.
Listen,
and you don't get to listen to the two
I don't want to confuse the viewers. I don't want people popping in and out. You know, we gotta let's get it down to the two people who are left who are relevant.
You held it down tonight, man. You held it under control. I was proud of you.
It's hard to do. I mean, this is a tough job. I'm having to. I'm over here sweating. My face is red. I mean, I'm struggling. All right. So, unfortunately, the question I was gonna ask is not a question I can ask anymore. So I'm trying to come up with one off the top of my head. One of the questions
is the Connor the GOAT? Is that the question still?
No, it was the greatest of all time in featherweight. But you both have the same answer. Because there is three answers. There's three legitimate answers.
No, there is. There's one legitimate answer.
So you both agree there. Okay.
And the second answer,
it's like saying Anderson Silva is not the best middleweight of all time. You know.
And the second one is not Conor McGregor either.
Probably not. Okay, here's what I'm gonna have you both do real quick. I'm gonna have you both pull out your phones or your computer, whatever you want to do. I want you to Facebook message me your number one MMA prospect. Someone who has not fought in the UFC. Someone who's not fought in the UFC, who is your number one prospect. I assume you guys are both going to have different answers. I want to make sure. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to go and plug my sponsors. Please, guys, go check out the Voball. Go to THEVOBALL.com. Check them out. After that, please go check out the Glen Avenue Soap Company. They're at glenavsoap.com. Ian has a question.
Does that include Bellator or no? Because I think both Keith and I are in agreement. No Bellator. Anything other than that, we're good?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm in.
Okay, this is fantastic. You both have different answers, so that means we are going to do it. Keith, I'm going to let you go first, and I'm going to see he says no. Oh, he gets to choose. I forgot. We made that rule last week. Whoever's
I'm co-creator. Fuck you.
Oh, no, you could sort of pull rank, except we decided this last week. So Keith gets to choose because he is in first place. Would you like him to go first? You're on mute, Keith.
Yeah, I'd like him to go first.
So the first thing I'm going to have you do, Ian, is can you guess what Keith says?
I have a backup answer if we have the same answer.
You don't.
We don't. You know what? You talk about prospects. It's really there's so many out there. I mean, to me, there's two guys that really stick out. Unless he said Shorty Torres, from Titan. Is that who you picked?
Yep.
Okay, I was going to pick that, and I really thought you would, so I did something different. I went with Ben Askren, which I think is really the only other legitimate answer, and it's kind of a cheat answer too. I know, but really, if you want to talk about a guy that's UFC caliber, or at least the person that we need to really find out the most, that will have the most impact in the division right away, it is someone like Ben Askren. He is undefeated. He does the same stuff every time, but no one's been able to stop it. Against guys like Douglas Lima, who I think Douglas Lima would still do pretty well in the UFC as well. I think Askren's wrestling pedigree, I think what he's done so far in his career, there really, to me, is no reason why we haven't seen him in the UFC yet. I think it kind of blows my mind. I don't know if there's contract issues or if Singapore just pays him so much more money that it just made that much more sense. And he's one of those guys that doesn't need the UFC brand to have a fulfilled career, and say, you know what? I never fought in the UFC, but guess what? If I did, I would have made $500,000. But in Singapore, I am making $5 million. He's one of those guys that has made the decision based on money. However, if you took it straight based on talent, there's no guy outside of the UFC who has had that type of dominance in the career against the biggest names you could possibly think of that are not in the UFC. So that's where I'm going with this. I think everyone, you can't disagree that Askren doesn't belong there. He is of the elite, and I think he would jump into 170 right away and at least be top 5, and especially with those guys not necessarily being the best at takedown defense, with some guys right at the top, I think he would do pretty well.
Fantastic. Thank you. And you will definitely be getting a chance to rebuttal regardless of Keith's answer. Yeah. All right, Keith, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I agree with Ben Askren. The problem is we really should have set better parameters. The guy's 32 years old. I mean, does that really count as a prospect anymore? I mean, think about this. Jose Aldo, people are saying his career's over. He's 30. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I got no issue with the answer because he's correct. He's a fantastic talent. I'm just saying, like, we should have set a better parameters. I mean, they should have been, like, under a certain age because I would probably go with him. I went with Shorty Torres just because right now, even he's a two-weight champion. He's a flyweight. So, when I look at talent, he's probably the only guy who's not signed that when I think of prospect, I think of regional shows, LFA, CASs, places like that. Not a major organization like ONE FC. Shorty Torres is the only guy I know right now that I think could walk into UFC right now and be in the top 10 rankings and beat guys in the top 10. Like, I think he could beat a Tim Elliott or Dustin Ortiz, someone like that. I kind of threw a backup one in there just for fun. Is Nurmagomedov's brother, Abu Bakar Nurmagomedov. He's more well-rounded than Khabib. He's not as good of a striker. He's probably like he's a better striker. I meant to say Khabib's like a 5 in striking. He's like a 7. While Khabib's like a 10 in wrestling. He's like an 8. But he's also a guy that I think he could walk in right now and beat guys at least in the top 25. My big issue with Askren is that, yeah, I agree that he could be a top 10. But I don't think he could be a champion level because he's one-dimensional. He has no stand-up. He makes Eric Spicy look like Canelo Alvarez. And this is the guy literally, he's the most boring fighter ever. He literally got stood up in mount before.
That's pretty fair. So I'm going to debate your thing with Torres, and I'll throw a different name out there. I think Torres is a good answer. That was my other answer. The problem is we're also, number one, the age thing can't be a factor because Dana White has said that age 30 to 31, 32, if healthy, is sometimes a fighter's peak based on injury and stuff like that. And remember, guys like Jose Aldo, when you're Brazilian, you start off at like 12. I think his first pro fight, he was like 16. So sometimes it can't always be about age. Some of these guys have spurts in their career. Some guys retire earlier. I mean, it really depends. Look at Max Holloway. You know, dude started off extremely young in the UFC. Same thing with Rory McDonald. You know, Rory McDonald, we all think is like 40, but the dude's like, he's really young. What was his first fight at age 20 in the UFC? I mean, he was another really young guy. Torres deserves to be in the UFC. He's a fantastic prospect, you know, and with the flyweight division where it's at, you know, I don't know if he beats guys like Dustin Ortiz yet. That's why he's still a prospect. I don't think he comes in and becomes top 5. I think he comes in and he adds some fresh blood to that division. That division really needs some new people, so it's not constantly recycled. You know, if you want to maybe pick someone else, it's so hard with all this. You could talk about Andre the Bull over at World Series of Fighting who just beat Lance Palmer. There's another guy, you know, if you want to bring him, or even Mackenzie Dern, even though she lost in her jiu-jitsu thing. If you want to add to the female world, a pretty chick, jiu-jitsu, who can fight to get some market towards that. Either one. I think both of us have good arguments. It's a tough question overall in the prospect world.
It is. Keith, if you want to rebuttal, you have 90 seconds.
Yeah, no, I mean, he makes good points. The thing is Shorty Torres is going to be getting better. Well, Ben Askren, he's probably on the back nine. At 32 years old, I mean, you can talk about that. You can talk about all the damage. You also got, if you're going to talk about the damage of fighting, you also got to take the damage of wrestling, all those years of wrestling, right? Wrestling internationally, wrestling in college, this and that. Plus, another thing people got to remember about is the style of Ben Askren's wrestling. He's not a big power double guy that kind of translates to MMA. He's a scramble guy. He's a guy that gets in scrambles, which is great it's fantastic for NCAA wrestling because he gets in the what they would call like top and bottom position, or they would call referee's position. That's where Ben Askren beat people. He didn't power double guys. And if you can't take, and now obviously he can take down guys. Obviously, he's an 3-time NCAA champion, or 2-time, whatever he was. But he hasn't gone against another wrestler on his level. And if he does, for example, Tyron Woodley, he struggles to take him down. Tyron Woodley would knock him out. Shorty Torres, I think the biggest strong argument is that he's getting better, and Ben Askren plus. If you take Shorty Torres to win, he'll come on your show.
10
Kyle.
seconds. Whatever.
I can get Ben Askren on this show. He's a friend of mine. I was his first ever sponsor, and we've hung out. So that's number one.
Well,
number two.
Here, hold on. Let me chime in real quick. Ben Askren also was I want to say he was a 900 rated disc golfer. I played disc golf. I have for a long time. He was sponsored by he was sponsored by Discraft, which is crazy. He had like a legitimate like disc golf sponsorship, and he was from what I remember, he was really, really good. All right, I'm going to give you guys another rebuttal here. This will be the final one. Ian, I'm going to give you.
He got 2 rebuttals. I only got 1. What's the deal?
No. You're getting. No. He got the one. He got the one.
I'm just fucking around.
But I'm going to give you guys both. I'll give you 45 seconds apiece. Ian, go ahead.
Perfect. So to your point, Ben Askren, his wrestling has transitioned to MMA. It's all he's done. He's done his funky type of wrestling, and it's worked. And look, he's even said it. He's not going to fix it if it's not broken. Until someone is able to defend the way he does it, he's going to throw his overhand right. He's going to do the way he takes people down. He's not a power double guy. You're right. But if you watch every single fight, he has told you what he's going to do. He's done it, and it's worked for him. He's never lost. Why change now? Yes, Woodley is someone there, but guess what? Woodley's not the only guy in the division. You put him against Wonder Boy, he will be able to take Wonder Boy down. He'll be able to grind him out. You know, there's plenty of guys at 170. If you throw Askren in there, he'll be able to do what he does. To your point, yes, against the champ, may he have difficulty and trouble? Sure. Ben Askren is injury-free, dude. He has not taken any damage in 10 seconds. He's taken 0 damage in MMA. He's been clean every fight, never backed out of a fight due to injury. Until someone stops what he does, he's going to keep doing it. And you know what? There's no saying that he hasn't gotten better. He hasn't had to get better.
Go ahead, Keith.
No, sorry. I try not to talk when I move. Well, the problem is he's good, but think about this for a second. He was the Bellator champion, and they let him go. They let him walk. They released him.
It's not what happened, though. Sorry, go ahead, my bad.
Well, that is what happened. They let him go. He was the champion.
Keep going. You're wasting time.
And on top of that,
my bad. Give him a reset.
He's a fantastic. No, I don't need it. He's a fantastic wrestler, but he hasn't really beat any really good wrestler. The only really wrestler he's going against was Jay Haran. He was 40 years old, and he was a junior college wrestler. It wasn't like an NCAA level wrestler or a national champion. No, I am not dogging his wrestling. But take a guy like Johnny Hendricks, who Ben Askren beat in wrestling. But if they fought in MMA, I think Ben Askren would knock his head off. Because I think they would match out, or he would do enough to keep it standing, and then then Johnny Hendricks could knock him out, and Johnny Hendricks could even crack the top 10 in welterweight right now. And another thing I'm talking about welterweight, if in 1FC he wouldn't even be a welterweight. If you go by the 1FC weight class, he's actually a middleweight.
Oh, interesting.
Not his fault.
But, I'm just saying. So you'd have to match him against middleweights too. Yeah. So it's to out wrestle Yoel Romero, who was a silver medalist in the Olympics.
But we know he's fighting at welterweight if he went to the UFC. And one last thing, just to let you know, yes, Bellator let him go. They couldn't match the money that he was getting. So even if they didn't want to let him go, in the contract with Bellator, just to give you a heads up, they have a matching period. I did the contracts for guys in Bellator as well. There was 0 chance. The amount of money, if you actually know what Askren gets paid, you will literally vomit and stain that white shirt you're wearing right now.
Well, he did just get a Lamborghini for beating a guy who he was a 2,000 point favorite against. He was it was one of the highest favorites in MMA history. And for getting that fantastic win, they gave him a Lamborghini.
Which is ridiculous. That's the opponents he gets. I'll agree with that one. And that's why you need to see what he's really made of.
Yeah. And about eight people in America tuned in. I was one of them, so.
All right. I'm going to give I think I have a winner. First of all, both of you guys did a fantastic job. As always, I thought this was better than last week, and I think it's going to keep getting better. This week the interim belt goes to Keith. Interim belt goes to Keith.
I quit.
I know. Well, trust me. Listen, as long as you don't piss and moan as much as Keith did because he lost last week, you're going to be in my good graces. So somehow Keith was able to overcome that because this man.
Satisfied because I had Shorty Torres, but I wanted to go different.
You did a good job. Keith, listen. Keith last week, he messaged me, I'm pretty sure every day to tell me that I was wrong to pick Derek last week.
Hey, in all fairness, someone actually messaged me and said you won. I swear to God.
Whatever. All right.
I'll forward it to you.
All right, please do.
Your mom doesn't count, bro.
All right, so.
Someone on my staff.
All right,
she's so proud of you.
Keith, you get the floor for 60 seconds to say whatever it is that your little heart desires. This isn't plugging yourself. This is you getting to say whatever you want. Don't waste it like Derek did.
Yeah. So I was thinking about something, and this is just like off the top of my head. It's not that deep. I'm sure there's probably issues with it, but I was thinking about this when we talked last week about sponsors. And we were talking about what Reebok needs to do, and I was thinking about just in general. I think it would be so much better for the sport if instead of you had the UFC get a sponsor, but instead of having fighters getting a banner with like 40 different, Dr. Phil's, Crab Shack and shit like that, if they got one sponsor from a major company and then that took over everything, it took over their clothing, everything, kind of like NASCAR. When you think of like Budweiser, you think Dale Earnhardt. Imagine if fighters were sponsored the same way. Like, okay, Budweiser has Conor McGregor and Lowe's has Frankie Edgar. And then you'd have like their shorts be the Lowe's symbol. And then you would think of it like NASCAR. They would make more money. There'd be more major companies in it. And then somehow maybe more hillbillies would get into it.
I like it, man. All right. Keith, go ahead and plug the website. Plug whatever it is you want to plug.
Yeah, check out our website, TheMMATakeover.com, and follow us on all our social media at The MMA Takeover and Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Keith, congratulations on your big win this week.
Thank you.
Dude, with this group of people, it's going to be I don't think we're going to have repeat champions, man. This is going to be tough every week, especially Blake. I think Blake's going to be real serious next week.
I'm not upset with second place for my first show.
Yeah.
But I'm not happy about second place.
Ian, plug whatever you want to plug, my friend.
Yeah, you know what? For all you guys out there, it's Parker K-Chiro on both Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Check out K-Chiro on Facebook. If you guys are into comics, movies, all that stuff, check out my comic book, literally called K-Chiro, graphic novel. And if you guys really like the shit, tweet it at Dana White because we're trying to become the kids brand of the UFC and trying to get WME to put us up as a Netflix series. That's what we're going for right now. I got Chris Weidman texting Brad Slater at the moment. His agent represents The Rock. So we're going full steam. And also, if you guys can help me out, I represent Gerald Harris right now, trying to get him into the UFC. I don't know if you guys know what happened. He tore his ACL right before the Ultimate Fighter show. And if you're watching this show, outside of my boy Eddie Gordon, I would have picked Gerald Harris to win this show based on talent. And he deserves to be there, even at age 37, after that body slam, that fat ass fucking
one of the best,
75 pounds.
Incredible.
One of the best knockouts in history.
Yeah.
Tweet that at Shelby's, my boy. It's no longer the Hurricane Harris. It's Gerald. I'm going to powerbomb your head through the fucking mat, Harris.
The guy
he needs to pay for his kids. He's got a lot of kids. He needs to make some more extra money.
For those of you who don't know, Harris body slammed a guy who missed weight by
74 pounds.
74 pounds, that's what it was. He missed weight by 74 pounds, and none of it was muscle.
And I'm not Gerald Harris, by the way.
Yeah,
no.
The guy's name was Kelvin Gastelum.
My boy Weidman's going to beat on July 22nd.
There you go, man. All righty. Tell Weidman to come on my show. That's the big one.
I can get him.
All righty. So that's it, guys. Again, it was a pleasure. Awesome. Keith, you got yourself an interim belt, my friend.
There you go, Keith. You win. I'm coming for you next week.
All right, guys. See you next week.
Have a good one.